serious question. What the hell is going on with the Supreme Court? We know that they are just rubber stamping everything. And it is so much worse than in his first term, when they actually ruled against him many times on some significant cases. But it seems that something is different in this second term. I have an article here. This just happened. The Supreme Court has given, well, let me read this. This is an article here from the Politico talking about a case that was just decided by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has given President Donald Trump the go-ahead to unilaterally withhold $4 billion in foreign aid previously appropriated by Congress. The High Court's ruling Friday, issued over the dissent of the 3 liberal justices, signals Trump has the upper hand in that battle. The decision effectively blessed Trump's pocket rescission, a controversial maneuver in which the president withheld the funds toward the end of the fiscal year so that the money could not be spent, even if Congress did not approve the rescission. You know, we used to have a word for that. It's called impoundment. It's when a president refuses to spend the money that has been appropriated by Congress. Now, this is not a sexy case. Trump withholding money, refusing to spend money that had been appropriated by Congress. That's not exciting. But this is so unbelievably important. And I'm going to tell you what I think is going on with the Supreme Court. But let me explain why this is so bad. You know, you've heard it said that Congress has the power of the purse. You know, we have a separation of powers built into our Constitution. The 3 branches of government, each branch has its own power, its own authority that can be exercised by it alone. Well, one of the powers of Congress in Article 1, which has never been questioned before in all of American history, is the power to spend money, or the power to authorize the spending of money. It's only Congress that has that power. And the president cannot legally spend a penny from the Treasury unless it has been approved or appropriated by Congress. And if it has been appropriated by Congress for a specific purpose, the president must spend that money, unless the appropriation legislation says that for whatever reason the president can, in his discretion, withhold the spending of that money. Unless that is said in the, is spelled out very clearly in the legislation appropriating the money, the president has no discretion. If Congress says this money must be spent for this purpose, the president must spend that money. Remember what the president's primary job is: to execute the laws. That's why it's called the executive branch. Congress, the legislative branch, passes the laws. The president executes them. An appropriation is a law passed by Congress directing the executive branch to spend money. So the president must spend that money. Here we have the Supreme Court saying, nah, if the president doesn't feel like spending it, the president doesn't have to spend it. The president can simply say, to hell with you, Congress. I don't care that you appropriated this money. I don't want to spend it. I don't think we should spend it, so I'm not going to spend it. In all of American history, at least insofar as we have been operating under this Constitution, because there was a time in the history of the United States where we weren't operating under this Constitution. But since we have been, it has never been questioned that a president could do this. No one ever believed that a president had this authority, because he doesn't. Very clearly, this is not arguable. You know, you read the plain text of the Constitution, he doesn't have this authority. Yet the Supreme Court just gave it to him. And I have I have my own theory as to why, which I'll share with you in a second. But let me explain to you, because you might be thinking, well, how the hell did the court justify this? And by the way, this was 6-3. So this means that every single Republican appointee to the Supreme Court voted to give Trump this power. Every Democrat appointee voted against it. So this is a clear partisan divide. And so you're thinking, well, how did they justify it? What reason did they give? What's their explanation? Well, they gave two, essentially. The first is one of their favorite go-tos. They said that this was foreign aid, right? And so some groups who were the beneficiaries of this foreign aid or had an interest in this foreign aid sued the Trump administration for impounding these funds. And the court said, well, they don't have standing. They don't have standing to bring this lawsuit, so we're not even going to decide the merits of this case, because they did in this case what they always do. This is sort of a preliminary ruling where they essentially rule in Trump's favor without technically ruling on the merits of the lawsuit. So here they just said, yeah, Trump can keep doing it because these people don't actually have standing to sue. The other thing they talked about is that, well, since this is foreign aid that Congress appropriated, and since the president has wide latitude in foreign affairs, you know, we're going to say that, yeah, he could probably do this, which is fucking absurd. Number one, he does not have complete authority over foreign affairs. Congress has a great deal of authority over foreign affairs, which it's spelled out in the Constitution several times, in several places, in several different ways. So the area of foreign affairs is not an exclusive authority of the president to the exclusion of the legislative branch. It's simply not so. Number two, this was an appropriation. It doesn't matter that it had anything to do with foreign affairs. It was an appropriation of Congress. And that is exclusively a power of the legislative branch. So this is just bullshit on its face. So those are the ridiculous justifications they offered in this preliminary ruling. But why? Because so many times this court is ruling in a way that is a flagrant violation of existing law, of the Constitution, of Supreme Court precedent. So why? Why would they so flagrantly rule against the clear meaning of the law and the Constitution and their own prior rulings? Well, some people, you know, think that Trump may be threatening them or may have dirt on them. Now, I don't discount that as a possibility. Trump is a thug. There is no doubt about it. I have no doubt that he would engage in those kinds of tactics if he could and if he felt the need, you know, if he had information on them, or he could just threaten them in some way. So I don't discount that as a possibility. I don't think it's what's going on, but I don't discount it. The other one that people subscribe to is that they are simply partners in his fascist movement, that they are full-on MAGA, and they are true believers. They're part of Trump's cult. I don't believe that either. I would not discount that as a possibility for at least two of them, however. Alito and Thomas, I think they're full-on MAGA. So I think that likely would apply to those two, but I don't think it explains all of them. No, what I think is actually going on here, at least with respect to the Justice Roberts wing of the court, which I think is, you know, the four other Republican appointees. I think you have Thomas and Alito. They're off on their own. They're just diehard friggin' fascist MAGA types, right? But the others, I don't believe are. Led by John Roberts. Let's just call that the Roberts faction. And I think for them, for John Roberts particularly, I think they have decided that they have to give Donald Trump virtually everything that he wants, because they're afraid that if they rule against him, that he will simply ignore their rulings. And there is no way for the court to enforce their rulings. They have no law enforcement wing of the court. They can't enforce their rule. They are dependent upon the executive branch to enforce their rulings. And if Trump is going to just ignore their rulings, then they will have no power whatsoever. Trump will have completely stripped them of all their power by just ignoring them. They lose completely their legitimacy. They're a nothing. They're a non-factor in our system anymore at that point. If the President of the United States simply ignores the court. That's what I think is going on here. I think these justices have convinced themselves that in order to preserve the court as an institution, as an independent branch of government, that they have to give Donald Trump virtually everything he wants, or else he will render them impotent, he will just ignore them, and that will be it for the court as an independent branch of government that anyone takes seriously. And I think they've convinced themselves of that, and I think they've convinced themselves that they just have to do this until Trump is gone, and then they can go back to being a court, a real court that actually rules on the law and the Constitution. I think that is foolish in the extreme. I think it is a violation of their oaths of office, and they should be impeached and removed from office. If that's how they're approaching their job, they have no business being on the court. I know that's not going to happen. I'm just saying theoretically. And here's another thing that makes me believe that, and that they plan to go back to trying to be the court that they're supposed to be once Trump is gone. And that is the way in which they have been ruling in his favor. They've been ruling in his favor on this shadow docket, where they don't actually issue any written opinions, where they lay out their legal reasoning. They just rule in his favor without saying anything. Or they rule in his favor on preliminary matters, like injunctions that get appealed. And they let him do what he wants without actually ruling on the merits. And what's important about both of those situations is that they're not creating any new legal precedent, and they're not overturning any existing precedent. So they're not actually changing the law at all. They're giving him what he wants without creating legal precedent, so that they can just, in their thinking, once Trump is gone, they can just go back to being a court as they should be and just go back to normal. They wouldn't have really changed the law or the Constitution in any fundamental way after having given Trump what he wanted, because they didn't actually issue any final rulings on the merits in which they wrote, legal opinions of the court that have precedential value. So they wouldn't have changed the law in any way or the Constitution. They think they have found this sneaky way to give Trump everything he wants without actually changing the law at all. This is so stupid and damaging to this republic on so many levels, for so many reasons that should be self-evident. But that's what I think is going on. And that's why I believe that Trump, for the rest of his presidency, will get virtually everything he wants from this court. And so they're going to have to decide about the constitutionality of his tariffs pretty soon. I don't think there's a chance in hell they're going to overturn them. And I think they gave a preview in this decision here as to what their rationale will be. They will say, I can almost guarantee you, yes, typically only Congress has the power to impose tariffs, but since this has to do with foreign affairs, we're going to give the president wide latitude. So we're going to say they're okay. That's what they're going to do. But one that is more interesting is, what are they going to do about birthright citizenship? There's no wiggle room in the Constitution on that one. But I don't see them ruling against him either. What are they going to do? How are they going to try to sidestep that issue? How are they going to try to let Donald Trump continue to do what he wants to do and deny citizenship to certain people born in this country, while also not invalidating the clear language of the 14th Amendment? Or will they even bother? I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyways, those are my thoughts on that. I thank you for listening. Hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you again soon.